Silksong has been out long enough for most people to beat it and make their own "why this is the best thing ever" video, but not me. I really wasn't gonna make a focused video on this game because I felt like I wouldn't have anything new to say about it. And for the most part, that remains true. I haven't even beaten it yet. I'm taking my time, getting distracted by Ys and Yakuza, and I'm trying to find a third game that starts with Y to play, but I haven't found one yet. But I have played enough of the game to feel like I could talk about one of my favorite implementations of a mechanic it put in. Because Silksong is chock full of fun and polished mechanics. It's got everything from diagonal pogo attacks, running, parachute dresses, and even a running. But of all the mechanics, there's one that gets me going, oh, neat, like no other. And that mechanic is money. So I decided to make a video talking about its currency, these little guys. The only reason I can find for people to look up the keywords Silksong and Rosary is to find an efficient farming spot for them. But they're really integral for the world, not just for buying items and checkpoints and maps and upgrades, you get the point, but also to understand the story of the game, and for me, how freaking cool it is when a mechanic is tied to world building. So, a quick brief on what these are, where you get them, and how you use them. These are rosary beads. They are the currency of the Kingdom of Farloom, and you get them by killing the insane pilgrims as you ascend the kingdom, and by exploring, finding caches, beating pilgrims who hoarded them, and doing side quests. You use them for everything in this game. Tools, health upgrades, expansions for crafting materials, checkpoints you have to buy to use, some aren't even permanent, we'll get back to those, and so on. They are the lifeblood of this kingdom and your progress at times. And that's what makes them so useful for the immersion of this game through its mechanics. Finding these rosaries is not enjoyable, at least in the first half of the game. But that's their point. You start this game in a place that can't even be called a small village, full of bugs that think their salvation awaits them if they can survive the climb and reach the citadel, carrying these rosaries of faith to use as resting points the benevolent people of the great city put to ease their ascent for the weary pilgrim. When in reality it's but one of the many means to take what meager wealth those who are less fortunate have. Farloom is designed to make sure pilgrims can't reach the citadel, not only with the physical tax of the climb itself, but with the wild, hostile bugs, little rooms for resting, and only for those who can afford it, but also with the guardian judges of the citadel itself. They remorselessly eliminate any pilgrim or passerby deemed impure to their sight. The countless husks strewn on paths beside them tell of their conclusive decisions. Rosaries in this world are one of the most important things, but only for keeping its status quo in check. For keeping those deemed lesser out of their ivory tower. No place better exemplifies this than the Underworks. This is where I personally fell in love with the rosaries as a mechanic for world building and sparked my interest in making this video. This is a place you fall into and must endure. It's a dark and deadly area with bugs who toil away working in this mechanical hell, where the refuse of the citadel goes to be discarded. A drained worker on the verge of collapse, consumed by the haunting, they continue to work far beyond their mortal limits. They toil incessantly for the citadel, their shells bent and grayed, and now the kingdom's curse means not even death can relieve them. This area is nothing less than horrific. The bugs are, even before the curse, forced to work until they eventually die. And the mechanics here tell that story. The most amount of rosaries you'll get from defeating enemies here is 3. The first, and I believe only resting point here, costs 15 rosaries, which is fairly cheap, until you use it, die, or come back later to rest and realize it's a per-use situation. Implying these workers, and I don't have their hourly wage, and I know they don't have a union I can call to ask, would have to use most, if not all of their money just to get a proper rest, which we know they don't get. The oppressive feel of this area is due to its dependency on rosaries and the lack of obtainable wealth for its inhabitants. The economy in Silksong feels annoying and frustrating because it's meant to. There's a clear wealth disparity which the rosaries help enforce as a subtle bit of storytelling. But if that wealth gap wasn't clear to you beforehand, it most certainly will be when you finally reach the citadel. A place where even the lowliest of class drops 13 to 15 rosaries. The buildings stretch up into the sky and are ornate and gaudy. Benches are simply around and it seems as if there is no want. And there isn't any. Once you get here in-game, you can easily take a little time and farm enough rosaries to buy anything you'll need for the rest of the game. Now here's the switch up for the video where I make it about all games and their mechanics instead of just Silksong. Making an economy for a game is a hard thing to balance even when you're not thinking about the implications for world building. One of the few games I think has a currency as integral for its world building as Silksong does is the Metro series, where bullets not only keep you alive as a soldier, but as a civilian or merchant. Them being the main form of currency in this post-apocalyptic Moscow makes me so much more invested than something silly like bottle caps. Bullets have a use, and anyone who is traveling in this world would most likely have them on their person. And being a world where anything you carry needs to have a purpose, something like coins or bottle caps would be an unnecessary thing to carry around. Everyone needs bullets in this world for protecting themselves and their community. And everyone needs food, water, supplies, and shelter. So having ammo be a general thing for trade does make sense, something that can help someone stay alive longer in a world where they aren't the top of the food chain. In a world where every bullet counts to keep you, the player, alive, and also what you'll be able to buy when you get back to town gives you decisions to make while you're in the field as well. So whether you choose to fight and use some ammo or to run and sneak your way through an area to use less ammo is a key part of whatever decision you make. Coupled with sections that force you to stand your ground and fight can incentivize you to play in more creative ways. By being braver with melee or using some of the rarer consumables like grenades, which also can solve the problem many games like this have where you hoard stuff until you really need it. All of these decisions come from the currency of the game being your main way to fight back against the world. These games are using their economies to invoke feelings from the player while making their worlds feel more real. If you ever had that moment of, damn, I'm X short of being able to buy this item, and you don't immediately have a solution for how you'll get that money, that was intended. The developers don't want you to have an answer immediately. They want you to figure out how you're gonna make that money. I really like video game economies, but it's honestly not something I typically think about while playing, unless the game does something special like Silksong or Metro. Money in games is usually just some number I need to kill a few goblins to see go up, and a number that will get bigger and bigger just by means of getting further in the game where enemies drop more of it. Things like potions being the same price in completely different countries in an RPG like Final Fantasy IX does take away from its world building, just not in a way that takes me personally out of the experience. Some mechanics fit better into some games than others. A game like Skyrim has a lore of class disparity, but it's a power fantasy where you yell at dragons. It's not trying to have you stop and think about the distribution of wealth between classes. You can, but there's not a mechanical or narrative focus on it like there is in Silksong. While Silksong and Metro do have strong mechanical ties to their economies that shape their narrative, they still are games people made for you to beat. So they have things and implementations to help you finish the game. Getting back to the point of the video with Silksong, the Citadel is a place where you can easily farm rosaries endlessly if you're patient, and that's a good thing for the game. As a player in a game like Silksong, it would be annoying if a shop had things that you could never get if you weren't able to grind. Even narratively, it makes sense where you're farming this currency, and it can alleviate some of the frustration some players may feel when they don't have enough money and they really want to buy an upgrade. But it's also where that feeling of poverty ends for the player and can never come back. The distinction of it being a narrative mechanic for immersion flips to it being a video game. Now when I don't have money for something, instead of exploring further to find a stash or a secret, I'll run to a fast travel area, slay some clergy bugs, and buy what I want. For as much as I love the bullet currency in Metro, playing through it I hardly ever had that feeling I talked about earlier. That feeling I'll need to not buy this thing if I want to win a gunfight later on. The game will give the player who explores enough ammo to get through most combat areas, if not all of them. And I really do think that's a good thing for most games. Making it become the focus for a whole playthrough of a game would start to get exhausting for most people. If a player in Silksong didn't have enough rosaries for something, they would do the same thing they do in the Citadel, just slower somewhere else. Possibly frustrating them enough to not finish the game, which is the worst scenario if they were enjoying themselves until that point. Making a system that emulates a real feeling most people have with financially struggling and tying it into your world building is not easy or common in games. But it's also what makes the medium of games so much more unique than every other medium. When you read a book about someone financially struggling, you can empathize and relate to that, but when done well in a game, you can feel that. And like I said at the start, I think that's pretty neat.